Broadcom inelastic, melting snowflakes, Intel halting a fab, FCC, BGP, OMG, Citrix licensing fun, Fortinet picks up Lacework, and a closer look at AI regulation in this week's episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. Hey everyone, welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown. It is Wednesday, June the 12th. My name is Tom Hollingsworth, and I am very happy to not be in 108-degree Las Vegas this week. Even though it is National Raggedy Ann and Andy Day, I felt like a rag doll after I was baking in all that heat. But thankfully, we're here with some cool news stories. And joining me this week is one of my favorite fill-in co-hosts, Mr. Max Mordiaro. Max, welcome to the Rundown.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Tom.
Well, we are very happy to have you here. We got some fun stories coming up, as you heard in the cold open, and I'm going to go ahead and kick this off because, well, it's Wednesday. That means it's another change to VMware by Broadcom licensing. This time, the change happens with VMware Cloud on AWS. There was an email that was sent late last week, and Broadcom told their customers that they were going to be moving to a subscription-only model for the product, and they are no longer supporting the on-demand licensing for the Elastic Cloud functionality. That means that if you want to use that functionality with VMware Cloud, you're going to have to pay for a yearly license instead of paying per instance. The deadline for purchasing those new licenses is coming up quick because it is August 1st. And as of today, the licensing models for Microsoft Azure and Google GCE have not changed. Max, I know we talk a lot about licensing in VMware on this podcast, but can you tell me what's going on here?
Well, Tom, I think the short answer is pretty obvious, right? Who would have thought that Broadcom might be looking to extort more money from its customers, right? So I think that's in a nutshell what's at play here. It's interesting though that the licensing changes are not impacting Microsoft and Google. That's the only thing I'm thinking about here is when it's going to hit those two companies, those two clouds. But otherwise, it's pretty obvious that Broadcom is after one thing, and it's customers' money, right? So nothing surprising here. The things that took years to VMware to build in getting something relatively credible as a cloud, solution is being systematically deconstructed by Broadcom, like just everything else. So nothing new under the sun, unfortunately. So we can move on to the next story here, which is around Snowflake security. Apparently, you can add landing tree to the list of companies running Snowflake that have been breached. The loan comparison site announced that one of its subsidiaries, QuoteWizard, was impacted by the massive data breach. Snowflake is still sticking to the story that it's not a problem on their side and that customers affected did not have multi-factor authentication enabled. Per reports, one of the entry points was an active demo account that was not MFA protected. Other entry points include leaked credentials stolen by malware infections. Snowflake maintains these attacks are targeted at organizations that are not using MFA. Tom, tell me something about MFA, please.
Well, here's what I should tell you about it. You should enable it. End of story. But more importantly, you know who should enable it? Snowflake. Now, if you read the article that we linked in the show notes, you're going to find out that Snowflake is maintaining this position of, we didn't do it. It's not our fault. It must have been him. Which is what the game that my kids play when something in the house gets broken. However, I will tell you something. It is very easy to force all of your customers to enable MFA on their accounts. You know how I know that? I got an email today from Ubiquiti saying they're going to enforce MFA on my account. And more importantly, if I don't pick a method by, I believe it was June 22nd, they're just going to enable this one for me. Do you see how that works, Snowflake? You can take charge. You can close this loophole. You don't have to sit there and point fingers at your customers and say, they should turn it on because it's not our job to do it. It is your job to do it because it's your database that's getting hacked. And let me tell you another little secret. If 48 people tell me that somebody's a jerk, I tend to believe that they're a jerk. But if one person tells me 48 other people are jerks, I tend to think it's the person. So if one giant database company is telling me that 50 of their customers keep getting hacked because they won't turn on MFA, and 50 of those customers are saying, hey, maybe you've got a problem, I wonder which one of those people I should believe, 1 or 50. I'll give you a hint. I'm probably not going to believe you because guess what? Your job is to keep your people safe. Let me reference another thing. Remember when S3 buckets were just open to the public by default? And everyone's like, that's a really dumb design decision. Maybe you should do something about that. It only took us years to get Amazon to say, maybe we should secure those things by default. Guess what? Your customers are going to start telling you over and over and over again that you're going to need to enable multi-factor authentication by default. I know it's possible because when I created a Salesforce account for the Futurum group, it made me enable it by default, and not just stupid text messaging authentication either. It made me use an app. Just do it, please. Quit pointing fingers. All right, I'm off of my soapbox now. The short version is that this is a massive problem that Snowflake is going to keep having issues with, and until they say they're going to start enabling multi-factor authentication on their client accounts by default, we're going to keep seeing more and more of these breaches come out, and it's going to look worse and worse for Snowflake as we go along. So, all right, deep breath. Okay, here we go. Intel is mothballing a $25 billion semiconductor plant in Kiryat Gat, Israel. Although the company claims that there is a commitment to Israel, there is no visibility for future plans on this project. Now, Max, I'm wondering, is this an isolated case? Is there something going on that we need to know about? Or is this maybe a larger change in the way that Intel is looking to do investment in foreign fabs?
Well, the thing which kind of pops up here, Tom, is the location, right? There's a plan to invest $25 billion in a country that has been, let's say, in a war state since 7th of October, 2023. So it's 9 months, and the situation doesn't seem to change. And as you know, there doesn't seem to be any kind of will from either one or the other side of the parties involved into this conflict, or whatever you want to call that. So, I mean, I don't know if you will be willing to invest 25 billions in a place where there's no clear, no clarity about whether things are going to stabilize when you're seeing, war scenes all over the place. So I think that's what's at play here, Tom. It's not, I think, a major change in the investment strategy from Intel. So they're just maybe waiting and seeing and waiting for things to cool down before they start pouring some money there again. So that's what I would say there. Right. So getting back to the U.S., apparently the FCC has announced a notice of proposed rule making that would require companies to to create and keep updated the plan to secure BGP, the Border Gateway Protocol, from attacks. Apparently, the protocol, as we know, is vulnerable to being hijacked, and we saw that in 2008 when Pakistan took over all of the YouTube traffic in an attempt to filter it in their country. Sorry, I'm just so laughing at that. So the proposed rule will require companies to file quarterly reports about their efforts to use certificate-based measures to keep the route secure and prevent takeover. Tom, is this kind of a realistic thing looking at how the protocol works?
Yeah, I think it is at least a step in the right direction. For those of you who've listened to the rundown who may not know what BGP is, first of all, it is Border Gateway Protocol, not Bridging Gap Protocol. That was misread on the news last year, and God knows we had a lot of fun with that. Because, don't just make up acronyms, kids. But the way that BGP works is that you connect to a neighbor, and the neighbor gives you routes that says, okay, this is how I have reachability information for the whole internet. And it is a list of paths to get to certain place on the internet. The problem is that it's like when you have that one friend who's directionally challenged and they claim that they can find their way anywhere, and you haven't been burned by this person enough, so you trust them. So it's like, oh yeah, I know how to get there. I'll take a shortcut. And everyone goes, I don't think this is a good idea. And sure enough, it's not. And that's basically what happens. But the problem is that BGP, for lack of a better term, is a moron, and it never learns. So what happens is that it will trust any information that you send it. And we've seen these little blackouts all the time. There's a website, Renesas runs it, where you can see when BGP traffic is hijacked and how long it's been hijacked for. You can see, like, one of the easy ways to take a country offline is to just withdraw its BGP routes from the global internet, which is actually what happened in Egypt during Arab Spring. They basically just took Egypt offline. That's something you can do. But the Pakistan story is fun because the Pakistani government was trying to figure out how to filter YouTube in their country, and they figured the best way to do it was to force all YouTube traffic through Pakistan for, I think it was 30 minutes. And they realized what a horrible mistake that was because it melted their internet infrastructure. But what this is doing is this is using certificate-based authentication to verify that the partner router that you're connecting to has the authority to give you those routes. And like I said, very big step in the right direction. More importantly, this is a mandate from the US federal government because there is a Department of Homeland Security authorization that says that they have to do this because this is like part of the cybersecurity thing. Look, I'm just saying if the US ever decides to go to war with a major power again, one of the Sino or Soviet persuasion, perhaps, one of the first things they're going to do is try to take out our internet infrastructure. And this is actually a really easy way to do it. You can jam up BGP pretty quickly, and it could take hours to sort out. And unless we're a bunch of idiots, we hopefully have a plan to fix that, or at least prevent it from happening. The other thing is that just so everybody knows how the FCC works, this is a notice for proposed rulemaking. This is, if you don't do this, I will make a rule. And there's a comment period, and then it needs to be voted on, and it needs to be put into action. This could be months in advance. But like I said, step in the right direction. We're getting there. I applaud the FCC for making these changes. And honestly, having Jessica Rosenworcel in charge of the FCC for the last few months has been a breath of fresh air because they're actually doing things that need to be done and not drinking out of comically oversized coffee cups. Not that I'm throwing shade. In a move that surprised partners and has been compared to Broadcom's 80/20 approach, Citrix has announced that only top-tier Platinum partners will now have access to partner use and demo licenses. Furthermore, Platinum partners will now get these only on request. Okay, here we go. Licensing again. Max, is this a move that's being driven by the bean counters at Citrix, or is there something else at play here?
Look, we were just discussing about that, Tom. I think that apparently everybody's been watching what VMware has been doing under Broadcom's tenure, and I think people are learning lessons here. They how to put that in a polite way in a video. They're saying that you can mistreat your customers and still get out of it and get money out of that. So everybody's probably trying to see where they can get money. I mean. Uh, frankly speaking, that's a pretty dumb move because those are licenses that were used primarily by partners, which are people which usually are enabling sales. So the thing you can think about it here is whether Broadcom is just thinking about juicing out and working only with their large top tier partners and let everybody else go, just like VMware is doing. I mean, Broadcom/VMware, maybe reducing the size of the teams which are supporting partners, whatever. And the other thing is, maybe thinking about getting more money out of that again. Working with larger partners and so on. I mean, for me, it's a very stupid move. But what can we say? I mean, it looks like those large players are just intent on letting everybody run away, migrate, and start, refactoring whatever they have. I mean, it's not that easy to do that with Citrix. Probably you have a better chance with VMware, but it looks like they're kind of those changes are kind of forcing organizations to think about their transformation and the direction they want to take. Yeah, so maybe it's a harm that may have some good benefits down the road. I cannot say that fully for Citrix, but at least for VMware, that's the case. Yeah, so I would say that's the closing word on that story. And now getting to Fortinet, the company has announced this week plans to acquire Lacework. The move seems to be a way to bolster their SASE platform with cloud intelligence and security. Lacework's primary offering is CNAPP, their cloud-native application protection platform. It allows customers to collect data about emerging threats and provides responses based on the Polygraph machine learning engine. Lacework has raised $1.8 billion in funding and was valued at one point over $8 billion before the acquisition. Terms of the deal were not disclosed. So, Tom, can you tell us a bit more about those two companies or what's the plan here?
Yeah, Lacework has been one of those unicorns that a lot of people have been keeping an eye on because they have a huge valuation. I mean, over $8 billion at one point, and they had a product that was actually very useful. This CNAP application performance or application protection platform was a great way, basically to say on a per app basis, I'm going to make sure that I'm looking for threats. Like, Heartbleed was a good example of a kind of an application specific problem. Yes, it attacked TLS before you get into comments and try to correct me. But a lot of applications are starting to use TLS connections for just about anything, which, let's be honest, they should. This is a way for Fortinet to bolster their SASE platform a little bit more. When you think about SASE, if you know anything about SD-WAN, you know that SASE is kind of the cloud-based um, security edge type thing. It is very much based around application access. I mean, let's be honest, most people don't use the cloud except to back up photos, to run applications. Like that's it. So anything you can do to provide extra security there is going to be a huge win. And not only that, but it's an evolving platform. Like you said, they're using their polygraph machine learning engine to constantly analyze new threats, because we see this a lot. I mean, when you look at the fact that I've been reading breach stories for years now, and no two of them are the same. Well, except maybe the Snowflake story up there where they keep getting breached because of the MFA thing. But other than that, like, they're constantly evolving the way that people attack stuff, right? And being able to kind of keep up with that is a huge boon for a security company like Fortinet. And they've always prided themselves on having the best intelligence, the best capabilities. And I know that they're working really hard on a lot of their platforms over there. So this is a good pickup. Now, what the other thing that kind of makes me a little bit curious is that the details of the acquisition were not disclosed. There's two reasons why you do that. One, you're not ready to say yet, but more importantly, two, legally, you do have to say it if it's material to the bottom line of the company doing the acquisition. And materiality has a threshold. And if it's below that, you don't have to report it. So look at what the material reporting threshold would be for Fortinet, and you can figure out roughly what that company was sold for. I'll give you a hint. It was way less than what they were valued at. I don't know that for sure. I'm not a financial analyst. I work with financial analysts and they aren't saying, but I would guess that they did not go for a unicorn valuation. I feel like maybe what this was that Lacework was trying to find a buyer, and Fortinet put up the best offer and value, and maybe even said they were going to be retaining a large number of the staff, because there was another article that I read that they got a short quote from the Lacework CEO in the press release, but there's no confirmation that he's moving over with the acquisition or any of that stuff, which generally means they're either buying this for a product and they're going to lay off most of the staff, or they're going to keep a core development team and then kind of figure out which duplication they need to get rid of. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Hopefully, like we said, no, I hope nobody loses their job, but that's not reality in these kinds of things. But I think that Lacework going to Fortinet is going to bolster both companies. It's actually going to make it better in the long run. All right, it's time for a closer look at a story, and yeah, we're going to be talking about AI. It's the big thing. Hey, I get it too, but you know who else is taking a closer look at AI? That would be the U.S. Department of Justice. Oh, and the FCC, because they have announced that they are going to have an agreement that gives them each a role to play in some potential antitrust investigations into the biggest players in AI. Guess who they are? NVIDIA, Microsoft, and OpenAI. They were all named in the agreement specifically. That's never good when the U.S. Department of Justice names you specifically. This follows reports that antitrust investigators have some really big concerns about AI and how companies that are developing it get their data and train their models and what kind of partnerships they're doing. Now, you may recall that back in 2019, the U.S. Department of Justice and the FCC did another one of these similar "I'll take my people, you take your people" thing, and brought suits against Meta, Amazon, Google, and Apple for antitrust violations, and that took years to work its way through the courts. Back in January, the US FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, had asked many of these companies, not just the three that were named, but several other ones, to provide investment information as well as partnerships with generative AI companies. And now we start hearing the rumors that the feds, by that we mean the feds that can put you in court, are very interested in these companies. So, Max, I want to kind of open this up to you as someone who maybe is looking at this from the lens of someone outside of the United States. Does it give you pause when the enforcement agencies of our federal government are like, we have questions about AI and we would like them answered before we take you to court?
Well, I would say that, looking at it from an external perspective and not totally from a US centric, money, 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 investment, investment, investment way. I'm looking at it more from what the citizen gets out of that, right? And I think that whenever, that may sound paradoxical eventually, but whenever I hear that the feds are getting involved into that, when there's an antitrust, kind of inquiry going on or whatever, I'm thinking, okay, there might be something good here for society at play. Yeah. And I'm not. It's not about kind of overturning the hard work that has been put in by NVIDIA or Microsoft or OpenAI and so on. But when you have three companies which are absolutely dominant like that on the market, first of all, in terms of whatever technology we're talking about. Secondly, when you're looking at the massive implications that AI is having, I mean, of course, we're talking only about LLMs, and you guys, so at Gestalt IT, at Tech Field Day, and also at the Futurum, this is something that you guys are covering in a way broader way than I could ever do. But you can see that the far-reaching implications of AI, the way it is, the data that is used to prepare to train the models, and so on, all of that has very profound implication on the intellectual property rights for the people which are producing content which is used for training, and they're not compensated for that. There are other implications, such as what does it mean for example, for a company like NVIDIA, which controls, I don't know, 70 or 80% of the market. I don't even think that there is any serious competitor at this point in time. It doesn't mean that there might not be one, but if you look at a company which has a valuation of $3 trillion, and you look at the huge valuations that Microsoft have, I didn't check the one that OpenAI has, but I think that Microsoft has a $13 billion stake in one of the subsidiaries. There's a lot of big money at play here, and I think that when government agencies are getting involved into that, it's kind of to, kind of put a bit of a halt and make sure that we are not going to have a kind of a cartel here with three companies which are absolutely dominating and crushing anything else, right? So that's my first thought on it. But you've been following that for way better than I do, so I would be really interested to hear what you think about that.
Somebody over there has got to be seriously having a bad day, because there's a big difference between when I ask you, hey man, what were you up to last Friday night? And when someone comes in and goes, can you please tell me your whereabouts on Friday around 6 to 8 p.m.? Like, there is a big difference when it is an official request from a legal authority. And notice that the way that this was divvied up, according to reports, the Department of Justice is the one that's looking at NVIDIA, and the FCC is the one who's decided to take on Microsoft and OpenAI. And those two companies are inexorably linked. Like you mentioned, Microsoft has like a $13-14 billion stake in OpenAI, and they're kind of working together on things. The NVIDIA thing is very interesting because, like you said, they are 80% of the AI infrastructure market right now. That screams trust problems. That screams monopoly. That screams we're going to do something about this. And if you think to yourself, well, this just isn't fair, the US government should stay out of this, I will remind you that there was a time in the 1990s when they did the exact same thing to a little company called Microsoft. Back when Windows had undocumented API calls that allowed Microsoft Office applications to load faster, so that those Microsoft Office applications were better performing than WordPerfect or WordStar or Lotus 123. Oh, you don't know what those programs are? Oh, you sweet summer child. It used to be that we had a lot of options in our Office suites, and now we don't. Well, I mean, okay, if you work in a law office, you're using WordPerfect, but I think that's just because they love using obsolete technology. Yeah, back in the day, Microsoft effectively ran all the other Office productivity applications out of business because they basically had a monopoly on the market. All of this has happened before. All of this will happen again. NVIDIA has an 80% stake in the market. Absent any other thing, the US government should take a look at that. What is it about your company that allows you to have a market cap that shot up by $1 trillion over the last year? I mean, right now we are literally seeing a horse race. At the time of this recording, Microsoft and Apple and NVIDIA are literally trading back and forth. Well, actually, it's more Microsoft and Apple right now, but NVIDIA is closing on them to be the most valuable company on the planet. That should say something about what's going on here. And consider the fact that NVIDIA owns 80% of the market. Microsoft is doing very busy things with OpenAI and developing a lot of LLMs. And Apple literally just announced on Monday that they're doing their own version of AI called Apple Intelligence. And guess which one they're using? Hint, it's ChatGPT. Well, it's one of the ones that they're going to be using. But the thing is that this, in and of itself, absent any hint of impropriety, should be something that somebody should be looking into, even if they clear them in the long run, because that's a monopoly, kids. This is not just buying Baltic Avenue and Mediterranean Avenue. This is literally cornering the market and making it so you can't win the game. And that's wrong for consumers.
Yeah, and think about what happened. Think, as you say, you need to look down the line 5, 10 years. What does it mean? Think about, no, let's imagine a hypothetical scenario where you have a company, an underdog, which comes in around 1999, 2000 something, creates a product, which a cool thing called virtualization. By 2005, the product starts becoming, interesting, adopted, and so on. By 2010, the product is everywhere. Everybody's using it. 10 years down the line, 2015, I mean, it's clear it's a played game, nothing, nobody else running there. Company has 90% market share on virtualization. 10 years down the line, 2023, the company is purchased by Broadcom, and the company decides to just gouge all of the customers and extract maximum value out of that. Now, imagine that's going to happen with NVIDIA. Maybe the CEO is a cool person, but maybe the company is going to be sold. They're going to do a divestment, merger, whatever you want to call it. That's the way it is. Things change in the world, especially with. I mean, perhaps when we're talking about trillions, it's a bit harder to move the needle than with just a few billion company like VMware. But see where we are. It's the problem with monopolies, and monopolies is also kind of halting innovation. If everybody's running on NVIDIA cards, and I'm not here kind of dissing the amount of effort that have been put in NVIDIA getting where they are, but if you have just one technology, okay, cool, it's great for standardization, but you don't have any, let's say, competition which can catch up. You don't have any innovation. So it's not fueling anything. It's going to stagnate eventually until someone else comes with something totally different and is going to disrupt the market again. But again, as you said, not a cool thing when one of those, company, and not companies, but agencies come here and say, hey, by the way, how comes you have more than 80% of the market? What's going on here? And remember, we've seen that back in the day. I'm not saying that there's been some kind of secret negotiation whatsoever, but remember back in the day when Microsoft was going and forging deals with IBM and with the others and Dell and I don't know whom to force them to run Windows and nothing else on the computers. So is there something at play here which says, we're going to give you a rebate, but you're not going to sell any other graphic cards than ours? I mean, apparently, NVIDIA is not the only one making GPUs. I'm not sure if AMD is doing something in that space as well, but it looks like they're far, 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 far behind, right? So that's what kind of rings my mind, and I may be saying something not factual. So sorry for
No,
that.
you're absolutely right. And anyone out there who runs Mac OS or Linux who's like, ah ha ha, Microsoft got beat with a stick back in the 90s, that stick is the reason why you can run your operating system, because it would not have taken much more effort for Microsoft and Intel to basically say your Intel chips only run Windows. Like that's the next step of a monopoly. Having a corner on the market is not in and of itself a monopoly. It's when you take actions to keep that corner on the market. Like you said, if you have 85 to 90% of a market, congratulations, you figured out how to win at business. It's when you say, okay, well, now you're only going to be able to buy things from me, or you're only going to be able to run this stuff if you pay me additional money. That is where the illegal practices start coming in. And I'm just going to tell you right now, because I know Jensen Huang listens to the show. So does Satya Nadella and Sam Altman. They're all big fans. I get their fan mail all the time. If you think it's bad now that the U.S. Department of Justice is taking a look at this, you really don't want the European regulators looking at this, because I promise you, when they're done with you, you will feel like you've been through a war, figuratively, of course, but not far off the mark, because they are going to take your companies apart. Like the US DOJ backed off of Microsoft. They got that agreement with the rebates and the, handshake deal that, office people aren't going to get to decide what's going to be in Windows anymore. And that's where we're at today. But that was at a time when the EU didn't exist. And now that the EU does exist, and they have, in my opinion, a lot more power to enforce change in the market, GDPR, that is going to be a big deal for these companies, because if the European regulators decide that it's time for you to break up, you're done. You don't get to appeal. You just get to break up. And that would be the death knell for any company. I don't care how big you are. If Apple had to divest their app business from their hardware business, that would hurt them a lot. If NVIDIA had to sell off their AI components from their graphics cards and build a wall between the two of them, that would be the end of NVIDIA. And if everybody out there is pearl clutching and thinking that that's impossible, there was a long time ago when people thought that Microsoft couldn't be divested from its operating system and its application business. And there's a reason why Microsoft was not very dominant in the late 90s and early 2000s until Satya Nadella shifted the way that the company was focused. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on this because the gears of governmental justice grind excruciatingly slow. So we're going to get lots of evergreen content out of this. So stay tuned to the rundown. But in the meantime, there's some other things going on that you absolutely want to be paying attention to. Two of them are happening this week. The first is the 6.5 Summit, AI Unleashed. It's happening right now. We have a lot of great interviews with a lot of big names in the field. Yesterday was Bill McDermott, the CEO of ServiceNow, who kicked off the whole thing. We've got today and tomorrow more great content. So just check out 65summit.com. It's free. Just sign up and follow along. You don't even have to pay anything. At the same time, the reason why Max is hosting with me today is because Stephen is at Cloud Field Day. And if you want to head over to techfieldday.com, click on the link for Cloud Field Day, you can check out the schedule of presentations. I believe they just wrapped up with Juniper, and there's more great stuff headed your way. Lots of cloud companies that are going to be presenting over the next 3 days. Then I'm going to be back in Las Vegas next week. I know. Yay, I'm going to roast alive. But I am getting some hot presentations from my friends at HPE Aruba Networking because we're going to be part of Networking Field Day exclusive with HPE Discover. And Aruba is going to be our big source of content for that because we've worked for a long, long time with Aruba, and we're very happy to be bringing you great technology from them. Look at techfieldday.com, click on the link for Networking Field Day exclusive, and you can check out what we're doing there. But Max, you're going to be in Vegas the same time I am, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be with Ariane from Tech Unplugged, and we're going to be at Pure Accelerate. So I definitely hope we'll have a chance to catch up and have a drink together.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure we'll probably have licensing changes to talk about or something. So tequila
and,
shots for
and
everybody.
antitrust laws, of course.
Well, of course. But you should trust us because we have a lot of great content headed your way over the weeks with the rundown. It's one of our favorite things to do. Every Wednesday in the afternoon, we publish our video feed for those of you who love to watch us on YouTube. We've published the show notes on gestaltit.com for those of you who are more readers and want to check out our sources. And then we publish a podcast episode. So if you're out mowing the yard or going for a run or stuck in traffic, you can get your news rundown. We're like your trusted tech NPR news reporters, only we're a little snarkier. And I like it that way. Just like I like each and every one of you that follow us. Make sure you're following gestaltit.com on all social media, that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/gestaltit video. And if you have any questions, please make sure to reach out to us. We're here all the time. Max, thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate having you as a co-host. If people want to check out the stuff that you do, where can they go to do that?
Very easily go to techunplug.io/blog and you'll get everything you need there.
Awesome. We'll be back next week with more great content. Until then, please stay safe, stay cool, and we will see you soon.